Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our newest episode of the Science and Stuff podcast. Today's topic is the science behind tennis, and we have four great varsity tennis players here at ND. My co-host Labuda is on varsity tennis, right?
Yep.
How's the season going so far?
Pretty good. We just had our first game.
Yeah, we could talk about the outcomes of that in a little bit. We also have Ryan Medayag here with us. How you doing, Ryan?
It's a pleasure to be here.
And then we have Andrew Koth here as well, returning guest.
Hello.
And then Stanis also returning guest.
It's good to be here.
So yeah, you guys had your first game yesterday, or first matches yesterday. How did it go? I heard Andrew, you and your brother played together. That was pretty cool, right?
Yes, it was a doubles only tournament, so y'all got into our groups, got paired up, and we ended up taking the win 3-2 on varsity.
Congrats, that's really good. Were there any notable games or anything special you guys wanted to talk about maybe before we start from yesterday?
I think we're good to just get into it.
Sounds good. So last year, one of our episodes that Labuda guested on last year was about sports in general. And for tennis, we talked about the spin on the ball. I forget the exact special name behind the effect, if anyone knows.
Magnus effect?
Yeah, that's what it was. Does anybody want to explain first what it is and then how that would be applied in tennis?
Yeah, I can talk about how it's applied in tennis. So a lot of tennis shots, you want to use topspin. That's when you brush up on the ball, causing it to spin forward. And the main goal of that, where the Magnus effect comes in, is that it gets the ball over the net, but it keeps the ball from flying all the way off the court over the fence. So it gives the ball that good arc, then it makes it dive down because of the Magnus effect. And that keeps the ball in. You get some nice deep shots with that, but also make sure that you can control your power. For slices too, you can make the ball kind of curve right to left to right, kind of throw off the opponent. So those are some of the ways you can kind of bend the ball and place your shots strategically.
That makes a lot of sense. And is it difficult to use that effect to cause spin on the ball, or is it more difficult to kind of have no spin? And is no spin also an option for a strategy in tennis? Or
yeah, some people do use no spin. The natural stroke really is just kind of brushing up on the ball, so most people do have a good amount of topspin there. It depends on your grip too, what kind of grip you use. So basically that changes what angle the racket's going to be hitting the ball at, which also affects the spin. But yeah, it really varies from player to player, what kind of spin they like to use more, how often they use it, when they use it. So yeah, there's a lot of variability there.
Yeah, if I could add on to that. I feel like I don't use a lot of spin, especially on my serves. I know Ryan has a really good curve whenever he serves, but whenever I serve, it's kind of doesn't curve or have as much spin. I think it's the way that I hit it. And it's also how Ko said, how you hold the racket, because you get more what's the word, you could do different things when you hold the racket differently, and it also depends where you hit it on the actual strings of the racket itself. So yeah.
what effect would hitting on the outside of this outside of the racket closest to the edges, would that be different from the sweet spot in the middle in that sense?
I guess you don't get as much power if you're hitting it near to the frame, because then the ball doesn't pocket as much on the strings, and the strings don't give it as much force. So you hit it on near the frame, usually it's not as good of a shot. Not able to get as much spin or as much power. So generally, you want to aim for that sweet spot right in the middle.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have anything to say?
No, not really, to be honest. But yeah. I guess just in terms of like hitting the racket, like there's like various grips that you can use. Like there's the forehand grip and like the Western grip, and like those, like the way you hold the racket, like it's almost like, I don't know. Some grips are really weird where you like hold it like you're like it's completely flat on the ground, like the head is flat on the ground, but and then when you swing it, it like hits like massive top spin, so it like throws off your opponent. But yeah, nothing much to add there.
To add on to that, Ron, the Western grip, that if when you're holding that, I know we've tried it out before, but the racket head is almost parallel to the ground. So when you hit the ball like that, you can just hit it as hard as you possibly can. It'll stay in the court because of that, just tons of topspin on that ball. It keeps it from just flying over the fence, keeps it in.
It's a man who knows his grips.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you.
Gentlemen, if I can jump in real quick with a question. So when you play tennis, do you decide on a grip that you like best? Or is it something that like people change mid-game?
I think. Oh, right.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Stan.
It's okay. Oh, okay. So I guess like especially during the serve, I know a lot of people like to use specific kind of serve because like during the serve motion, obviously the game kind of like puts a pause on, and you have time to like kind of adjust yourself and how you want to like hit the ball. But obviously during the motion of the game, sometimes when it's like a long rally, you have to like switch from like forehand to backhand. So like sometimes you just won't have enough time to readjust. And so like you can obviously practice in those situations, like get the grip how you like it, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. And sometimes you have to work with just what you get.
Yep. To add on to that, like they say, the only real return you can prepare for in tennis is the serve, because everything else is just kind of you micro adjusting to whatever the opponent gives you. So like it also has a lot to do with the swing also. Like there's a lot of various swings, the chop, other swings like the Western swing that like gives you a bunch of top spin. So yeah, like grip, it changes throughout the game, but swing also does too.
Yeah, just going off what everybody said. I mean, I do the same thing. Like, whenever I serve, I have like a certain serve, and then whenever it's on my like a forehand hit, I always have like the same kind of grip. But then when it's on my backhand, I kind of switch more to like two hands because like I haven't really played tennis that much, so like just hitting it with one hand doesn't like feel right for some reason. But yeah, I switched to like two hands for backhands. And yeah, when you're trying to like curve it or make it dip, you do like you hold the tennis racket like differently than you would normally.
Oh, really interesting. Speaking of rackets, I know there's we talked about it yesterday during our club meeting, and I talked about it a little bit before this recording with Mr. Og. So there's limitations on the rackets, and I had like that makes sense, but I was just confused like what the specific reason was. And Mr. Og said that the sweet spot of the racket is in the center, and so with a bigger racket, the sweet spot's easier to use and to find during a match. So is the sweet spot because of the tension and the strings being the most like I don't know, like, because I feel like the tension would be the tightest towards the edge of the racket, right? Because there's like, does anybody know like where the tension is in the racket the most? I guess.
Yeah, I'd assume that would be closest to the frame. But another interesting thing about tension is that when you're restringing the racket, you can adjust it to however many pounds of force you want to adjust it to. So if you want it more on the tense side, you want the more pounds of force in those strings, then you'll get more control. You won't get as much power. And if you want that tension to be a lot lower, then you will get a lot of power and a lot of spin, but it'll be harder to control your shots. So tension plays a big role. String tension plays a big role. And you can kind of switch that up based on what kind of player you are. what your goals are.
Yeah, I like to add on to that. While the sweet spot is in the center, I do agree with that. Like some like professionals, they like to hit like, especially when they're doing a topspin serve, like the very top edge of their racket, like not the very top, but like slightly off from the middle, just so that they could get more curve. But I do agree that like in the middle, when you hit like a ball in the middle of the racket, it's like they say the racket's like an extension of your hand, so it just kind of feels more right to hit it in the middle, more control, more power.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. That makes a lot more sense now. I know the other thing we talked about, you mentioned we want to talk about on the podcast was the fuzz on the tennis balls. And a quick Google search, because I originally asked, like, why are they fuzzy? And it's because it reduces drag on the tennis ball, which was surprising, meaning that they can go even faster if there was no fuzz on the outside of the ball. But you said there was a name for it, right?
Yeah, it's called the nap. The outer side is called like the nap. And yeah, they make it fuzzy so that it like slows it down when you hit it, especially for serves, things like that. Another thing that we also wanted to talk about was like the different type of courts that they have. I did a little research. And so there's like the grass, there's the acrylic surfaces, which are in the US Open and I think the Australia Open. And then there's like the clay ones, and like each have their own advantages. Does anybody like remember what those advantages are?
Yeah, no, Andrew,
Ryan,
go first.
No, Ryan, we insist.
Okay. All right, I'll go first. Thank you, Stan. So I did a little bit of research. So just a little quick history. Like when tennis got popular in the 12th century in like northern France, a lot of the tennis courts were like indoors, and they were only available to like the higher ups, like in only in like wide areas. I think only available in grass. But then like once it became more popular with the introduction of like easily maintained hard courts, cement courts, they realized that there are a bunch of different types and they could all have their own advantages. So for clay courts, we find that the ball ends up slowing down and bouncing higher than in usual courts. Like for an example, I found if a ball was traveling at 67 miles per hour, it would lose about 43% of its ground speed and slow down to about 38 miles per hour and would end up bouncing way higher because since the bottom of the ball ends up being like stopped or not stopped, but like slowed down like rapidly compared to the top of the ball because the coefficient of friction on clay is a lot higher than the other courts. So the velocity of the ball would be directed more upward, giving it more bounce. And then in grass courts, we find that the ball is like quote unquote the fastest on those kind of courts because it kind of has like I think a lower coefficient of friction, giving it less higher bounce and giving it like the sense that since it only like bounces very like short, that it's faster. And it's about 15 to 20% faster than clay. And then I think hard courts are kind of in the middle of those two.
I mean, I guess what I was gonna say is pretty much the same as Ryan. Like, obviously with the grass courts, obviously like the bounce is gonna be a lot less. With the clay, the bounce is gonna be pretty high, and obviously with the cement courts, it's gonna be kind of in the middle. Also, an interesting fact is about a drop on you guys is that most of the courts in the U.S., like the public parks, are all like cement courts, just because they're the easiest to maintain. Because, for example, like during the English World Champion, like the World, what are they called? Like I forgot, like the Wimbledon Opens, the Opens. Yeah, like the certain tournaments, like the courts, obviously the clay and the grass have to be maintained, obviously to be even level, like a fair playing field. With the cement courts, like it's just kind of, you put in the cement and you don't have to be maintained as much. They're the easiest for just the public and the people just like play on.
What is like the most common courts you guys play on at like through the ND program?
Hard courts.
Hard courts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely hard cement courts.
Have you
Now,
guys played-
Daniel, you said you just started playing. Did you ask for an easy court?
Did you?
No.
No. Do you guys ever get to play on like any clay courts or maybe grass or artificial grass, like at any special tournaments or schools that you guys play at?
Not for our tournaments at school, but I've actually played on a clay court before. Not many in the area, but yeah, it's pretty nice, except for the fact that the one that I went to wasn't very well maintained. So there are it wasn't very even. Ball kind of goes flying, and the footprints of the clay and all that. You got to rake it every once in a while, water it. So yeah, there's a lot more maintenance that has to go into it. But yeah, it's a different experience. Kind of feels like you're playing a different game at some points, but yeah, it's pretty cool. But none of that, unfortunately, in our conference tournaments and our match play with Notre Dame here.
Wait, would you say you play better on the clay courts or on the cement courts?
I'd say the cement courts, Dan, just more practice there.
I get you.
A lot more predictable when you're on the cement, unless you're playing at Northeast Park, which has cracks going down the middle of every court.
That's some fair reasoning.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. I remember, so we were talking yesterday about the like technology behind tennis and how it's become so advanced, like they can even analyze the depression of the ball when it hits the court. So I found an article about all the different stuff, and I think it's called like Hawkeye Technology. At least is how this website listed it. It's like it's able to track the trajectory of the ball, and it allows for players to call an umpire's or a linesman's like call if it was a little bit like sketchy. But it says that it uses about 7 cameras to track the ball with a triangular algorithm, delivering a 3-dimensional representation of the trajectory of the ball, and is a faultless system. So like that's pretty cool, like how this technology is used in tennis, but then how it's happened a little bit with soccer, where they use I forget what it's called, the
VAR.
Yeah, the VAR, where it's just kind of taking out the human error in sports. So that's pretty interesting too, honestly. Mr. Og, did you have something?
I was just going to say that you said it's a pretty faultless technology. That's good because faults aren't good in tennis.
Wow, I get it. Oh, Coach, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's pretty cool because, in baseball, umps call a wild strike every once in a while. Basketball, you get that controversial foul call every other couple plays. But tennis, a lot of that's really been eliminated. So it's left to the players on their skill. I think that's pretty cool because it gives everybody a unique playing field and make sure that just the better player wins every time. So it's just something that's cool that's been going on with tennis.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It's definitely a good thing. But like I'm assuming the answer is no, but have you guys ever played with like that technology available to you? No. Maybe one day. Maybe you guys make it that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we just call it ourselves whenever we play at Northeast. So there's definitely some error there.
Is Northeast where you guys practice usually?
Yeah. And there's like some cracks in the courts too, so that affects it. I had a question for you guys. Do you ever feel like you have like a certain play style when you're in a match?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off. So every player should know their strengths and their weaknesses. For mine, I like to stay back at the baseline, which is the court or the line at the end of the court. So I like to stay towards the back of the court and just hit ground strokes. A bit more defensive, but other players like to rush up to the net, just attack everything, be aggressive. But we got to know your style and what you're going for. I know Stan has a pretty interesting style, so I'll let him go next.
All right, so I'd say that first off, my main weakness thing's my serve. Like my serve is it's just not there. Just put it lightly. But I guess with my play style, I like to kind of stay like in the middle of the baseline in the net. And I really like to hit like kind of cheeky short balls. Like so the players like run up to the net. And then once they're up there, I kind of like hit it to the corner. And I'm just kind of I don't know. I'm just kind of like a all-around menace on the court. I'd say that's it's just my play style, I guess.
Dang, that's pretty scary.
I can attest to what Stanislaw said. I mean, many times I've played him, he just makes very cheeky hits. What about you, Ryan?
I mean, first I gotta agree with Stan. Stan's playstyle is indeed very interesting. Like the way he curves it, I've never seen it before. The ball will curve 3 different ways before it hits the ground. It's insane. But I guess my playstyle definitely not up to par to Stan's. But I try to go for that hard serve, and then when they get the weak return, I just punish them at the net. That's it, really. And then just play consistently.
Yeah, I guess I sort of play similar to Stan. I feel like my serves are a bit better, but I don't get as cheeky of hits as Stan. But I try to place my shots, especially in doubles.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's good you guys all have an idea of what you like to do and what's good for you and what works for you. Does anybody have any last things I want to talk about tennis? No?
It's a great sport.
I agree. I've only played it like once. Ryan was my coach for like a half hour. It was fun. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming to be a guest. And I forgot to introduce Mr. Og. Thank you, Mr. Og, for being a moderator.
And I'm just glad that you let me be here.
Sorry, but thank you for letting us be here. That's more accurate. And yeah, that does it for this episode. See you YZs later.